Okay, I hope you have a pen there or something if you want to write down some of my favorite books. I'm just going to give you the list here and tell you a little bit about each book. Okay, the first book, How to Be a Great Astrologer. James Braha is actually a friend of mine, and I liked his book mostly because his horoscope was on the back of the book, so I felt like I got to know him before I even got the book. Great Hindu astrologer, and he will tell you about the aspects in your horoscope with great detail. And he's a little emphatical, but I like him. He's a lot of fun. He exaggerates a lot, and that's what the Hindus say. You will never, never, never be happy, or you will always, always, always be happy. And that's kind of how the book reads, so you have to interpret it yourself, but it's a lot of fun. Okay, the next one is Aspects in Astrology by a British astrologer named Sue Tompkins, who's the head of the Astrological Faculty in London. And it's an excellent book if you want to know more about the aspects, in-depth analysis of the aspects and what they mean. For example, somebody that has Pluto on the ascendant feels that the world is a very dangerous place and filled with landmines, and they have to be very careful when they walk through. So she'll give you all kinds of clues. Also, horoscope symbols, anything by Rob Hand, the master astrologer up in Cape Cod, who is also a friend of mine, who banged me in the head once with his sailing boat boom. But the thing about Rob is that he's an excellent horoscope writer, interpreter. You know, he's been doing it. His father was an astrologer. He's an astrologer. He's now doing Project Hindsight. They're recovering ancient books that were never translated before because the church did not authorize astrology books to be translated. They found Greek and Latin texts, and now they have astrologers that are Greek and Latin interpreters, and that's what they're doing. They're uncovering all kinds of old-time astrological techniques and trying them out now, trying to synthesize them and integrate them into astrology today. So there's a Dynamics and Aspect book. It will tell you about T-squares and grand crosses and all kinds of weird configurations, grand trines, grand sextiles. You know, I highly recommend this book. It's by Bill Tierney. He lives up in New England, and he's a very good astrologer. The Nodes, the Lunar Nodes book. This is the best book on nodes that money can buy. It comes from the AFA out in Tempe, Arizona. You got to call them up and order it. It's by a guy named Kopak Kar, who apparently channeled all this energy because he was an engineer and suddenly wrote 5 astrology books like in 5 years. So he just had all this knowledge that came to him instantly. So I really highly recommend that book. The Astrologer's Handbook is the book I used when I first studied astrology, and I still use it today to look up little incidentals that I can't remember. And it will tell you all about how to interpret your horoscope. They have sold over 250,000 copies, and it's like one of the best books for the layman. How to Learn Astrology by Joan March and McEvers. Okay, this is a pretty good book. They're a little flat, you know what I mean? They're not very spiritual. But if you want just your basic ABCs, I highly recommend them. Also, The Astrological Aspects by Carter, CEO. Carter is like an old-time British astrologer. He's off the planet now, but he gives you some very good bases for understanding astrology. And I also like the A to Z of Astrology by Llewellyn George, rather. And this has a whole lot of interesting things. Like, for example, if you have Jupiter in Pisces, it means you're lucky with liquids. So maybe, you start a salad dressing company or something like that. Astrology in Your Past Lives by Jean Avery. If you want to know about your past life, you have to look to the planet Saturn. Its position, the sign, and the aspects made to it will tell you some secrets. Jean will share them with you in her book. Modern Transits. This is the only really good book on what we call minor transits, like quincunxes or semisquares or sesiquadrants. And it's written by Lois Roden, who is quite a great astrologer. She's written many books. She's a collector of astrology birth dates of the rich and famous and the infamous. And anyway, this is a really good book. I use it almost every day. The Mercury Method of Chart Comparison is a book on synastry, how you relate to another person, only using the position of Mercury through both of your charts and how Mercury interacts. And it's very interesting. You ought to read it. How to Predict the Future by James Braha is a wonderful book on transits. It's very good to Rob Hand's book on transits, also very good. But I like this one just as much, and I almost use this one as much as well. But anyway, you got to read both of the transit books. They're the best that you can get. Planets in Transit, written by Rob Hand, I just told you about. Anything by Liz Green is very psychological. She really interprets myths quite a bit, and Howard Saporis, who has left the planet as well, excellent astrologer. There's so many good ones. Stephen Forrest, anything by him is also very good. But these are a list of the books that I use all the time. And if you're really a spiritual person, you might want to read Isabel Hickey's Spiritual Astrology. But I don't like that book because she's a little bit bitter, and it comes through in her interpretation. Like, for example, if your moon is in Scorpio, ooh, you got a lot of cleaning up to do. And so she almost will scare you about your horoscope.